After 27 years of silence, Prince Harry secretly returned to Althorp and did the unthinkable: opened Princess Diana's tomb. What he saw inside changed everything. Hidden injuries, a sealed letter, and chilling evidence left him pale, shaken, and speechless. The truth Diana took to her grave may not stay buried. The silent return to Althorp. On a gray October morning in 2024, Prince Harry stepped out of a black unmarked vehicle onto the grounds of Althorp Estate, his mother's childhood home and her final resting place. There were no photographers, no aides flanking his sides, no press waiting by the gates. This visit wasn't announced, and it wasn't ceremonial. It was personal, and unlike every trip before, this one came with a purpose no one expected. It had been 27 years since Princess Diana's burial on that island in the lake. The public had been told her tomb was sacred, untouched, protected. But over the past year, whispers had reached Harry through private royal channels. Disturbing ones, quiet mentions of inconsistencies. A note, reportedly sent from a former palace staffer, claimed something had been overlooked. And worse, that her tomb might not be fully untouched. Harry had spent years trying to bury his own suspicions out of loyalty, guilt, or exhaustion. But something shifted. And now, in total secrecy, he'd authorized a step that would have once been unthinkable: the opening of Princess Diana's tomb. The decision wasn't made lightly. Behind the scenes, legal teams, private investigators, and discreet royal courtiers worked for months to secure approval. Every move was checked twice. Official paperwork was filed quietly under the Ecclesiastical Exhumation Act. Even King Charles was notified, though not consulted. "It's not about scandal," Harry reportedly said to his legal team. "It's about truth." Security was intensely tight. No phones, no photos, and a minimal team of pathologists and historical consultants were present. The mood was described as cold, reverent, and tense. The lake was still. The wind picked up. And then, just before noon, the excavation began. As workers gently removed the engraved stone slab, a chill passed over the gathered group. Not just the weather, but something else, as one observer put it, the kind of cold that goes through your bones. Unnatural. Harry stood silently. For a man who had seen war zones, media harassment, and royal betrayals, this was different. His hands clenched. His expression hardened. This wasn't just a royal visit. This was the beginning of a reckoning. The opening of Diana's tomb. It took just under an hour to fully expose the burial chamber beneath the island at Althorp. A combination of concrete layers, sealed lead casing, and reinforced outer housing had protected the tomb for nearly 3 decades. But once the final barrier was removed, the air changed. Prince Harry, normally composed under pressure, was seen taking 2 steps back as the coffin came into view. A witness later said his face went white, not with grief, but with fear. "You could feel the air go still," one forensic technician said. "It was like the room didn't want us there." The casket, a custom-built design placed in 1997, was partially intact, but the space around it was not as expected. Dust patterns were off. The chamber seal had been disturbed. Faint scratch marks lined a panel on the tomb wall, ones that hadn't been there originally, according to archived documentation. The burial chamber, assumed to have been sealed permanently, now raised serious questions. A soft cloth bag lay near the coffin, degraded with time, revealing what looked like old letters, a rosary, and a faded scarf, all assumed to have been interred with Diana. But nearby, one expert noticed an indentation in the stone and what looked like tool marks around the edge. Forensics paused. Photos were taken. A decision had to be made: open the coffin or leave it. Harry, silent and stone-faced, reportedly whispered, "Do it." Pathologists worked with surgical precision. As the lid of the coffin was carefully lifted, the room went silent again. And then came the moment no one was prepared for. Her body was partially preserved, but her injuries didn't match the official narrative, said one pathologist. Fractures on the ribs and pelvis and deep bruising on the arms were observed. Some marks looked consistent with restraint, not a high-speed impact. Even more chilling, a sealed medical pouch was found beside her body. Inside, a water-damaged note containing 3 words still readable. They lied. Protect. Harry reportedly stepped back, shaking, unable to speak. His hands covered his face. A lifetime of unanswered questions had finally begun to find voice. Not in speeches, not in interviews, but in the silent presence of the one woman he had lost, and the one truth he could no longer ignore. And this was just the beginning. Disturbing clues. Inside the chamber. The deeper the team looked into the burial chamber, the more disturbing the details became. Beneath the stone floor near the head of the coffin, a small panel had clearly been tampered with. Experts noticed it immediately. The dust was disrupted, the edges uneven. Scratch marks, possibly from tools, ran across the surface. Whoever had accessed this panel hadn't done so recently, but they also hadn't been authorized. It wasn't vandalism, one expert said. It was careful, deliberate, and very wrong. The room, expected to be untouched since August 1997, told a different story. There were no digital security records from that era. Whatever had happened here, it was likely done in secret, by someone with access and knowledge. A second forensic red flag came from the lack of complete sealant between the burial chamber and the outer stone casing. Moisture had gotten in. Items buried with Diana, a rosary, silk scarf, and what appeared to be private letters were damaged far more than they should have been for a sealed site. Some objects were missing entirely, despite being listed in the original burial log. The forensic team began to worry, not just about preservation, but about integrity. One whispered, "This doesn't feel like a royal burial. It feels like someone tried to erase part of it." But the most haunting detail was this. When scanning the space with ground-penetrating imaging, there appeared to be a second, faint heat signature recorded along the east-facing wall, like something or someone had been inside more recently than anyone realized. The reverence of the moment began to shift into investigation mode. The goal wasn't just mourning now, it was evidence. And what came next would take the mystery to an entirely new level. Unsealing the coffin, a shocking discovery. Prince Harry gave the order. With one nod, the forensic pathologists opened the sealed casket that had remained untouched since Diana was buried in 1997. The lid was lifted slowly, carefully. No cameras, no press, just royal witnesses, medical experts, and a silence so thick it was suffocating. What lay inside stunned even the most hardened professionals. Princess Diana's body, expected to be completely decomposed, was partially preserved. The embalming had held far better than anticipated, but it wasn't the condition of her remains that shocked everyone. It was the injuries. "They didn't match what we were told," said a forensic consultant. "It didn't add up." Key bones, ribs, collarbone, pelvis, showed fractures inconsistent with a high-speed crash. Instead of being scattered or shattered from impact, the breaks were linear and contained, suggesting external force applied before death. Even more chilling were the bruises along her wrists and upper arms, consistent with restraint. One expert called it deep tissue bruising that suggested a struggle. But the discovery that brought the room to a complete stop was a clean surgical incision along the side of her abdomen. One internal organ, believed to be the spleen, had been removed. There was no medical record of this procedure ever being performed on Diana. Then came the final shock. Tucked inside a sealed leather pouch, buried beside her, was a handwritten note on royal stationery, damp, faded, but with words still visible. They lied. Betrayal. Protect him. The pouch had been placed intentionally, not part of the official record, not listed in any burial documents. A royal historian on site identified the handwriting as Diana's, confirmed later through samples from her 1995 personal diaries. Harry, already pale, stepped back from the casket, trembling. A palace representative attempted to speak. Harry held up his hand and said only one word. Enough. This wasn't grief anymore. This was something else. This was a truth buried for 27 years and finally clawing its way to the surface. And behind closed doors, he was already preparing for what came next. The forensic analysis that changed everything. Once the tomb was resealed, Princess Diana's remains were quietly transferred under heavy royal security to a private forensic facility in southern England. The building was unmarked. The operation was silent. The public had no idea what had just been set in motion. Inside, a hand-picked team of forensic pathologists, toxicologists, and royal coroners began the process. What they discovered over the next 48 hours would turn the official narrative upside down. The first anomaly was in the bone structure. The fractures observed during the initial examination were now mapped digitally, and they didn't match the expected pattern of a high-speed vehicular collision. In fact, one lead forensic specialist said, "The injuries are inconsistent with blunt force trauma from a crash. They suggest prior impact or manipulation." Then came the bruising. Imaging revealed faint but deliberate bruises around the wrists, forearms, and abdomen, signs of possible restraint. These marks weren't documented in the original 1997 post-mortem reports. In fact, several current experts noted those reports were unusually brief and incomplete, even by older standards. But what truly shook the team was the toxicology. An advanced blood panel revealed compounds not recorded in Diana's medical history, synthetic agents, traceable to sedatives and nerve suppressants, yet absent from any known treatment she'd received. One toxicologist was quoted saying, "This shouldn't be in her system. Not in these amounts, not at that time." Even more suspicious, a surgical incision along the side of her abdomen, clean, post-mortem, and undocumented. Internal scans revealed that her spleen had been removed. No record of such a procedure exists in any of Diana's known medical files. At this point, the tone of the analysis shifted from investigative to criminal. "We're not saying this was murder," one senior analyst stated confidentially, "but we are saying the official story can't explain this." The findings were delivered directly to Prince Harry under lock and key. Only 3 royal officials were allowed to see the report in full, and once Harry read it, he reportedly said only 5 words. "Now I know." They knew. What began as a quiet personal reckoning was now unraveling into a full-scale historical scandal, one that could rewrite the story of one of the most tragic royal events in modern memory. And that weight would soon collapse on Harry's shoulders. Prince Harry's breakdown behind closed doors. And he didn't move for nearly an hour after reading the final page. Inside a secured private office, Prince Harry stood frozen, staring at the forensic evidence in silence. The man who had endured tabloid wars, military deployments, and global scrutiny was visibly shaking. An aide later said it was like watching someone absorb a lifetime of betrayal all at once. The report wasn't just about inconsistent injuries or missing medical records. It was about lies. Lies told by people he had trusted his entire life. People who had sworn to protect Diana, but may have done the opposite. She was silenced. And they buried the silence, Harry reportedly told his private security officer. And we helped them. All these years, we helped them do it. He didn't speak to anyone for the rest of the day. His phone was off. Palace lines were blocked. Even Meghan wasn't contacted until later that night. Staff were ordered to leave him alone. One senior staffer who had known Harry since childhood described the moment. "I've never seen him like that. Not at his wedding, not at the funeral. This was different. This was the look of a man finally realizing the truth cost him everything." Later, he reportedly stood by the window overlooking the Althorp grounds, staring out toward the island where Diana was buried, and he whispered something no one forgot. She knew. That's why she left it behind, not just for the world, for us. That night, Harry didn't ask for press coverage. He didn't demand a statement from the palace. But what he did do was activate his legal team. Because now, he didn't want silence. He wanted the truth, and the world was about to hear it. The letter fragment that changed everything. Point 7. Just as the forensics team was finalizing its withdrawal from the sealed site at Althorp, one burial assistant, doing a final sweep of the velvet-lined coffin chamber, noticed something tucked beneath the edge of the coffin's base. It was small, folded, water-damaged, barely legible. But as the assistant carefully opened the brittle paper, 2 letters stood out in the lower corner. DS, Diana Spencer. The handwriting, shaky but elegant, matched known samples of Diana's private notes, later confirmed by a leading royal handwriting analyst. The ink had faded, and parts were smudged, but several haunting words were still visible. "If something happens, protect William. They'll say it was fate. But I know better." The room went silent. One forensic witness would later recall, "You could hear a heartbeat in that room. Everyone just stopped breathing." This wasn't just a letter. It was a warning, buried, hidden, waiting to be found. And now, 27 years later, it was speaking again, louder than ever. Harry was handed the note in a sealed preservation folder. He didn't unfold it right away. He stared at the initials, rubbed his thumb over the corner, then slowly opened it and read the words in silence. For a long time, he didn't move. Then, finally, he whispered, "She knew. All along, she knew." This fragment, combined with the forensic findings, changed everything. It wasn't just a conspiracy theory anymore. It was evidence, written by Diana herself. And by the time Harry left Althorp that evening, the letter had already been digitally scanned and archived. But someone, perhaps intentionally, had leaked word of its contents. By the next day, the world would be on fire. Leaks, hashtags, and public awakening. Point 8. Despite the palace's best efforts to keep the findings classified, it was already too late. Within 24 hours, whispers of a letter had hit social media. At first, it was dismissed as rumor, until a photo of the initialed paper fragment surfaced online, watermarked by an anonymous whistleblower. Twitter, now X, TikTok, and Instagram exploded. Hashtags like #JusticeForDiana, #TheTombTruth, and hashtag Harry Knows surged to the top of global trends. Millions began resharing old interviews, Diana's 1995 panorama confession, her final days in Paris, her fears of being followed, the timing, the silences. It was all being looked at again, but this time with evidence. "This isn't conspiracy anymore," one viral post read. "This is buried truth, finally dug up." Major news outlets broke into programming. BBC News ran a full re-examination of the original 1997 crash investigation. Sky News aired a 2-hour special. Diana, the warning they ignored. CNN, ITV, and Channel 4 lined up royal biographers, bodyguards, and legal experts, all now rethinking everything. Public pressure mounted fast. Online petitions demanding a reopening of the official inquiry reached over 2.7 million signatures in 48 hours. Meanwhile, the palace said nothing. Their silence only fueled speculation. Every hour without comment made the institution look complicit. "It's not about Harry anymore," one headline read. "It's about what the Crown did, or didn't do, in 1997. Harry, now back in London, convened with his legal team. He ordered full access to Operation Padgy, the UK's original inquiry into Diana's death. He contacted MI6 whistleblowers, forensic specialists, and even international crash investigators. But behind the scenes, he made one more call to his brother. And when William answered, the course of royal history began to shift again. Harry's mission for the truth begins. Point 9. Back in London, barely 72 hours after the Althorp exhumation, Prince Harry was no longer grieving. He was preparing for war. The sealed forensic reports were now in his hands. The letter fragment was being authenticated, preserved, and protected by his legal team. And yet, none of it felt real until one final move. He reopened the classified records from Operation Padgy, the government inquiry into Diana's death that had long been considered closed. His first order? Full access to restricted witness testimonies, medical reports, and surveillance files from 1997 to 1999, documents even he had never seen before. Some of them, he discovered, had never been shown to William either. And that's when Harry made the call that changed everything. "It's time," he told William, "not as heirs, as sons." To the world, they had been estranged, but beneath the public silence, a connection still lingered, and it finally cracked open. William's response, according to an insider, was simple: "I'll help, if it's for her." Within 48 hours, the brothers were in private talks. Lawyers were sworn to secrecy. Investigators began working off the record. For the first time in years, Harry and William were on the same side, not for the monarchy, not for headlines, but for their mother. Behind closed doors, palace officials scrambled. Legal teams feared the fallout. But for Harry, there was no turning back. "This isn't about titles anymore," he told an advisor. "This is about truth. And she deserves the truth." And for the first time since 1997, the Crown had no control over the story. The royal family in crisis. Point 10. The fallout behind palace walls was immediate and chaotic. By the time leaked images of Diana's letter and fragments of the forensic summary hit the global press, the royal household was in full lockdown mode. Senior aides were called to Clarence House at 6 a.m. for emergency damage control meetings. Every royal press officer was ordered to stay off the record. The official statement released that evening was cold and clinical. The royal household supports all private efforts by family members to grieve and reflect. No further comment will be made. But behind the scenes, panic was setting in. King Charles, according to a courtier, was visibly shaken, but trying to stay composed. He was briefed on the findings from the exhumation, but chose not to speak publicly, fearing that any comment could spark constitutional scrutiny. Queen Camilla, however, was reportedly furious. Sources say she advised immediate legal containment, concerned that further leaks could reignite public hostility toward her role in Diana's final years. Inside the palace, a split was forming, not just between generations, but between truth and tradition. Meanwhile, journalists who had once accepted the official narrative began turning on the palace. Op-eds from The Guardian, The Telegraph, and The Times questioned the monarchy's silence. For the first time in decades, Diana's ghost wasn't just haunting the crown, but it was challenging it. "They've built an institution on silence," one headline read, "but silence just lost its power." In private, Harry and William continued gathering evidence, holding confidential calls with allies, reviewing old footage, cross-checking timelines. The tension inside Buckingham Palace grew by the hour. And then came one final moment that no one saw coming. At a private event, a reporter asked William quietly, "Do you believe the truth is finally coming out?" William paused, looked down. "I believe it never went away. We just stopped looking." The monarchy was on edge. The world was listening. And somewhere, Diana's voice, buried for 27 years, was finally being heard again. Because this wasn't just about her death anymore. It was about everything they tried to bury with her. What began as a quiet visit became a turning point in royal history. Prince Harry didn't just open a tomb, he opened decades of buried questions. The signs of tampering, the injuries, and Diana's handwritten note all pointed to one terrifying possibility. The official story was never the full truth. As whispers turn into headlines and investigations gain momentum, one thing is clear: Harry won't stay silent. And neither will the memory of the woman who tried to warn the world. This is no longer about grief. This is about justice. And the story is only just beginning.